Right guys, so back again, doing something else on the smart again. So, I'm guessing I jinxed myself last time when I said that I don't know how much more I'm going to have to replace on this. Well, ironically, straight after doing the alternator, the water pump decided to give out. So now I've got to do the water pump. Yet another fun job because the water pump is above the alternator, but we're just going to get into it and see how it goes. It's a bit fiddly, but should be able to do it.
Right, so the water pump is nestled up the top there, you can just see it. That top pulley, when the camera focuses on it, that top pulley, that's the water pump. The one above that is the aircon, that's off to the left. So, it's a bit awkward to get in there, but I should be able to do it. Obviously I've got to slack off the alternator belt, slack off the AC belt, but I might just take the AC belt off because I don't use that. I don't even know why a smart car would have AC, but it's not something I see the point of personally. But I've got to get this off, get that off, and then get that pulley off. So the first thing is attack the pulley with a 4mm Allen bit and a spanner. This is basically following the write up on FQ101, and I'll link that in the description because it's quite a clear write up. This isn't going to be easy, but working on a smart never is. Right, so I've undone that Torx bit there, slackened off that tensioner and took off the AC belt. Now I'm going to slacken off the alternator and take off the auxiliary belt. And I've got a 4mm Allen in one of the bolts. I'm going to keep that in there and go around the rest of the bolts because I'm using that as a way to hold it, to be able to undo them. Right, so that's the water pump pulley off. The 4mm Allens are out. So the way I did it is I put an Allen key in one hole and then used a 4mm Allen bit in one of the other screws and a 10mm spanner on this bit to crack it off, and then a bit of prying and wiggling. But these bearings are absolutely shot on this water pump, and I really wish I'd seen this the other day. So according to the guide, there are 7 E10. There you go, you can see where it's leaking from. There are 7 E10 bolts holding that on. There's a bit of feeling involved, and you've got your 16mm alternator bolt. Now the nut on the back side of the alternator is going to be the hardest part of this job, in all honesty. So we'll get to loosening that off, and all I'm going to do is crack off the bolts. I'm not going to undo them yet, I'm just going to crack them off, and then I'm going to drain the coolant, which for me is going to be a bit awkward because the car is on the ramps, but I'm just going with the sort of send it method at the moment because I need to get this done. That needs changing. That pulley, that pump, you can see it rocking a bit, but it doesn't do it justice how much it's moving. It is absolutely shot. So it was due a replacement, so let's get to it. Right, so the old pump is off. You can just see up there, because I can't. So the old pump is off. As I was undoing the bolts, I was putting the bolts in the new pump just to keep the orientation. I believe they're all the same bolts, but I was just making sure to keep the orientation. And then once I freed this one off the block, which it will chuck water everywhere, but once I'd freed this one off the block, I then transferred the bolts onto this one, so then I can line this pump up on the block and put the bolts in. All these bolts do have blue thread lock, so make sure to put blue thread lock on them again. And then yeah,
it is really fiddly and time consuming undoing all 7 of these bolts, but like I say, the worst part is yet to come, is with this alternator bolt here. Getting the nut on the back side of that is going to be the biggest challenge, but we're going to put the new seal in this and then fit that up in there. But this one couldn't be more shot. Yeah, it sounds really gnarly, and I'll show you that later in the video. But so far it's not been too much of a bad job, but it's very fiddly. So yeah, I'm gonna crack on and get a bit more of that done. When you drain the engine block, you have this drain plug here, and that's what I used to drain the engine, and then obviously the water pump holds some coolant as well. So yeah, I'm gonna get to putting this new one on. So after all that, we're finally running the car up to try and bleed the coolant system with the front end in the air. No, I didn't drain all of the coolant out of this. I only drained the coolant from the engine block itself. So it's not a total coolant flush, but it does get a bit messy. This job was far more awkward doing it this way. So my advice is, if you're doing this job, just do it when you're doing your alternator. If you've got to do an alternator, do the water pump, definitely. But the car's running now, got to wait for it to get up to temperature and just see what it does. So I've raised the front end to make the expansion tank higher than the engine itself. The expansion tank's just in there, and keep an eye on the coolant level and just see what it does. Right, so it's actually a little bit after the fact now. I didn't actually film an outro for this video because there's several things along the way that sort of hindered the progress, shall we say, which is why it's sort of half a video, if that makes sense. So basically, fitting the water pump's exactly the reverse of taking it off. There's nothing special about that. It's just literally do what you did taking it off to put it back on. Retension the belt, make sure the belt's not too tight, simple things like that. Now the complicated thing a little bit with these cars is actually bleeding the cooling system, and the way I did it was to have the front end up on ramps with the lower back end, and I took the clip out of the temperature sensor, then lost it, and that bled the air out from the top of the engine. So you can bleed the air out from the lower part of the block using the drain screw on the block, but then you have to remove the temperature sensor as well. You could just break the seal, but the thing is, it's very easy to lose that clip. So put a cable tie around it, like a string of cable ties around it, so if it does ping off, you don't lose it somewhere in the engine bay like I did. I've actually got a piece of solder wire holding mine in, which is rated higher than the temperature, but it's all I had at the time. I've now got a replacement clip, but that clip can cause you a real headache if you lose it. So it's best to just be really cautious with that. I didn't actually have to fully remove the clip to get the air out of it either. So I was a bit daft for fully removing it. Basically, you can just pull it back a bit, pull the sensor up a tiny bit, and it will break that seal and the air will bleed out. That would have been enough. But me being me, I pinged it too far and it disappeared. So just be cautious of that. I know it looks like half the effort went into the video, but actually all the effort went into fixing this problem. The video was just, I was trying to make the video as a guide to help anyone else that has this issue, because it's just as common as the alternator, which is why you should replace the water pump when you do the alternator, which I didn't. That's my fault. Anyway, I hope it's been useful to you, at least a little bit. and got you halfway there. Check out FQ101 for the bleeding procedure and any more guides. Evolution as well. Both those sites seem to give good advice. FQ101 seems a bit more forthcoming without being a member. So yeah, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one, which might not actually be a smart car video for a change.